Hello and welcome to ThinqTanq, where our diverse leaders tackle your diverse challenges. Today we're looking at how to balance support and accountability on your team. I'm your host, Ray P. Ferrer, the CEO of Ray Coach, and won't you join me as we welcome today's ThinqTankers?
Hi, everybody. I'm Elida Bautista, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley. I'm calling in from San Francisco, where I live on my own, but I can hear all of my neighbors.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Ingram. I'm Assistant Vice President for School of Medicine Alumni Relations and Engagement at the Fund for Johns Hopkins Medicine. I am here in Baltimore, Maryland at our home, which is also Ingram Learning Academy for our son who will be 2 later this month. So he just started his 2nd semester of school.
Aw.
Hello, my name is Damon Packwood. I'm the creator and executive director of a nonprofit called Gameheads, and it's noon right now, so if you hear a horn blowing, that is not my fault, but it's also not like a bombing or anything like that. It's 2021, things are better now.
And I'm sitting here in North Carolina, where just past camera range, just past where I'm looking now, all the neighbors are walking their dogs right now and peering into this window, wondering what on earth is going on in my room right now and why are these lights happening? What is he doing? So it's interesting to look past this camera and look past over my viewers' heads and watch everybody staring at me right now. Today's challenge, folks, is sent in from a leader in the UK, and they write, "Dear ThinqTanq, I have a super diverse and terrific team of mostly people of color. Each of my team members is experiencing difficulty in various ways during the COVID crisis. Their work productivity looks different than it did prior to the pandemic. I can't count the number of times team members are crying during their one-on-ones. And I notice some of my team members shutting down and looking like depression is setting in. Others have shared that their families are or are about to be in deep financial difficulty due to the crisis. How do I encourage my team members to take care of their mental health and other needs while still being respectful of their boundaries? Signed, a good boss." So, folks, we know that COVID-19, that the crisis is disproportionately affecting people of color in a variety of ways all around the world. So what are your initial thoughts about the challenge this leader raises? Who'd like to go first? Damon, yes.
So I remember I was working, when I was working at Juma Ventures in San Francisco, that was just a stressful job in general, diverse team, the whole 9 yards. Given the work that we were doing, working with like low income students, it was just very, very stressful. So one thing that our supervisor did that I thought was pretty dope, I had never experienced this before, is that they had this guy come in one time and he kept going to like people's offices and talking about their posture and stuff. He used to come into my office and be like, "Yeah, man, you need to work on your posture a little bit. You need to come in here and do some body work with me." And I was like, "Body work? What is this guy talking about?" Well, it turns out they were bringing in a yoga instructor for like, a few weeks just to get us comfortable with them being in the space. And then after a while, they started doing yoga, right? And it was kind of an opt-in sort of thing. And then after a while, we started doing it together. So the thing that was really cool is that the person that was supervising us took part in a yoga class, and they went first. And then after a while, of us walking past the room, seeing them do yoga like one at a time, we all started to participate. And then together we were doing yoga like once a week. And then it even got to the point where when the budget ran out for it, we started throwing in to bring the yoga instructor in. And I think that having that, one, it was yoga, so very relaxing, but also it kind of made us closer as a group. And it was really cool to see the supervisor kind of go first and set the tone. So it didn't necessarily erase the problem, right? Like the problem is still there, but you are always going to have problems and they're not necessarily going to go away. But it was a nice exercise and a thing that we looked forward to for about a year. That kind of like helped alleviate a lot of the stress.
It's interesting, Damon, to see all the elements that helped make that a success, right? So if there's a slow introduction, a normalization of that concern, and a normalization of that response to be workplace related, not I'm sending you out to get care elsewhere, but we're making this
Yep.
part of here.
Yeah.
Ellie, though, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I have. I'll love to build on what Damon was saying and thinking about how a lot of what we're seeing that has disproportionately impacted communities of color has always disproportionately impacted us, and it's just been either exacerbated or just come to light because of COVID, and I can totally relate. I have a team of all people of color, and I'd say at any given point, one of us has been significantly impacted in our personal lives, and and we probably also are a little bit more equipped to figure out how to draw that boundary in the workplace so that we keep being productive, which isn't always helpful, right? And I imagine this person clearly is seen as a safe, supportive supervisor which allows for those particular employees to come forward and share. But one of the things that I have done in the past is just introducing a little bit of mindfulness into our team meetings. So like a couple minutes at the beginning of a meeting. So it doesn't necessarily pinpoint a particular person's struggle, or but rather it acknowledges that we all have things going on that might be stressors at different points, and it just kind of allows you to ground yourself in that particular space at that moment. But it introduces some level of self-care versus being told we need to figure out somehow how to balance self-care when it is virtually impossible given all of these challenges that we're seeing, and our realities as people of color. I think globally, given 500 years of, the effects of colonization. So I think building it in is a really the way to kind of take care of your community rather than kind of telling people somehow you have to figure this out on your own. And of course, any kind of reminders or opportunities to allow folks to know what's available to them through like employee assistance programs, right, including mental health coverage.
So like what are the existing services that are external to the work group, but also there's a lot of this happening in what you're talking about now, both you and Damon, right? Like how do we weave it in to the fabric that we're creating as a team of people of color, right? It's interesting to think about the cultural differences as well, because, in the US, it's a little more normal in a lot of workplaces to say, how are you feeling? And it's not always the norm, in a workplace or in a nation to come at your colleagues and say, how are you feeling? I'm feeling great, and that's almost seen as a joke, like, and
Right.
it's a stereotype of Americans in some places, that we sit around going like, I'm not fulfilled today, right? Before we,
Right.
but
And then
how are
it's
you?
not
I'm not
authentic when we
fulfilled.
say we're good.
Exactly right.
It's
As opposed
perceived
to
as
fine,
inauthentic.
right? I'm fine.
I'm all right.
Yeah, I'm Robin, what are your thoughts about all of this? Yeah.
I used to have a rule that was you will not cry at work. You will not cry at work. Like that was my rule. You better not cry at work. But you know what? It happens and it's okay. And I think even the fact that his or her team members cried in front of them shows that they're vulnerable and they trust their boss, which is good. And it's hard. I've had people cry in front of me, and when you're in person, you can hand the tissue, but when you're over Zoom or video, that's hard. You can't do anything, and so you have to kind of allow them that moment. And when you're on the phone, it's even worse because there could be a pause and you don't know, are they crying or did the call drop? So it's a difficult situation to navigate. I think some role modeling is going to be important too. So the more that the team leader shows that they are exercising some self-care and that people should do that too, is important. And sharing, this is what I did, and I hope that you all can take time to do X, Y, Z, is important, and showing that this is acceptable in the world that we're living in. And even some things, I think, Alita, you may have mentioned this as well, like what are things that you can implement for your team? I love the concept of Meet Less Mondays, MEET. And so, pick a day. It doesn't even have to be Monday, but pick a day where there are no meetings, and give people that opportunity to have some self-care, or, just dig into their work or do more of what they need to do for themselves. So thinking about those creative things to do for the team, again, not pinpointing one person, but if someone does come to you and share what they're really experiencing, taking some time to think about what resources are things that can be helpful for them too.
One thing, just getting back to culture, that they used to do when I was working out of a Youth Impact Hub, Oakland, they used to do sexy salads, right? So it's like every Thursday they would create a salad bar, and they would just call it Sexy Salad, and they would invite everybody that was in, not just in the office, but everybody that was in the space. And everybody would just come and break bread and then just eat. But it was all healthy food. So it was all just salads, right? And I remember thinking it was like stupid when I first got there. But it was great. Like, it was like, one, it was Sexy Salad. People were looking forward to it. It had this like really funky name, right? But also because, it was high energy food. So like what I noticed is that after Sexy Salad, right, that day, it was like Thursday or Friday, everybody had a lot of high energy because they had just ate like a really good meal, and then somebody else prepared it for them. So throwing like really sort of silly but healthy things into your culture, I think, is really, really cool.
This isn't as directly related to the question, but in terms of like building in healthy habits in the workplace that are essentially conveying self-care or we care, is not having meetings on Zoom. Every once in a while, if it's a one-on-one meeting, being able to have it be a phone meeting.
Yes.
Or even in person. One of my favorite things, UC Berkeley is a beautiful campus. So if I had a one-on-one meeting, whether it was with a staff member or a student, I would suggest that we go on a walking meeting, get some movement in, kind of gets the flow going. We get to enjoy nature and gets us out of sitting in the office. And so I've carried that over into the Zoom world as much as possible. Gives my eye a break from the computer screen time, gets me out into, some vitamin D, getting some sunlight and all that good stuff. And so it's just ways to continue to care in an acknowledgement that we're in a stressful environment, or that, maybe your team members might have a lot of ongoing stress beyond COVID that is just part of what's been kind of handed to us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Recently I was part of a Zoom call with senior leaders in a major US-based union organization. And one of the leaders said, "I'm not going to be on camera for this call. Please excuse me." Turned her camera off, and that was the end of it. No discussion, no bad feelings, and fully engaged for the rest of the conversation, but like, "I'm not camera ready right now." And I just think, what a joy to be able to not put your makeup on, not do your hair, or not have to worry about these things for
Keep
just
your
the
head
one
rag
call.
on.
Right. It's like, and worry like, what are they going to think if the rag is on, whatever.
But
I have a collection of
love
wigs.
that.
Maybe I'm going to start wearing those just, because I'm bored. But changing it up is important, and also giving people some privacy and giving people some privacy in their home back, because that's another self-care technique for a lot of folks. So many ideas have been shared right now. I want to thank everybody for these. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation, but we're going to have more. Keep in mind that it's important to normalize self-care on your team. Explicitly model self-care as the leader. Otherwise, it's not going to be something that gets normalized. Think about who to refer to externally, but also incorporate practices on your team that make self-care a part of how you get together, whether it's sexy salads or meatless Mondays or whatever it might be, or a mindfulness practice. Try out these new things, experiment with them, and find ways to change the culture so self-care becomes normal. Thanks again to our Think Tankers, and thanks to you for sending in your challenges. If you have a challenge you'd like us to have at, send it to me, ray@raycoach.com, and we'll take it into account. That's all we have. Thanks again. Take care.